Hello everyone, and welcome to the demonstration video for Excel Chapter 1. Alright, so we are moving on from Microsoft Word. You should have gotten pretty familiar with the interface for now, and some of you may be concerned about getting into Excel. Don't worry, again, that's what we have these demonstration videos for. Alright, and of course, once more, if you want to get some resources for this chapter, I've provided it in the Excel Chapter 1 resources. Make sure you're taking a look at those pages. And of course, make sure if you like to take notes or you want to follow along with the skills we'll be covering, you could download the skeleton notes. For this demonstration video, you don't need to download a file. We're going to be starting from scratch. All right, but let's get into it. So at least this chapter, it's just an introduction to using workbooks, or in this case, spreadsheets. I'll explain what that is in a moment, but we're just going to go ahead, just like with our chapter 1 for Microsoft Word, we're going to create a workbook and start editing it. All right, so we're starting from the scratch. Let me remove the screen. All right, first we got to locate to our Excel application. So let's go ahead. Here I'm going to go to my start, and remember I have my stuff pinned, but you could always look up Excel in your application, and it should be this logo with the X. It's very cube, very structured. All right, go ahead and start it up, and let's wait for it to load in. Perfect. And you'll notice this setup is very similar to a setup that you are used to in Microsoft Word. Basically, again, this layout of your start area, your home area, this is going to be pretty consistent throughout all of the applications. So there won't really be any curveballs thrown at you. When we get to access, there are a couple of things to take into account, but just know setup is still the same. You have your home, creating a new file, and opening one. Let's go ahead and start a new spreadsheet. Or in this case, a new workbook. I'll explain the differences between those terminologies, although they're usually used interchangeably. But to start a new workbook, you just go ahead. Remember, in our home area, there's, of course, still templates you could use for your workbook, but we're going to start a blank one. So go ahead and click on blank workbook. There we go. Oh, mine's is formatted a little weirdly, but let me go ahead and close this up. Perfect. The ribbon terminology is still going to be the same. You see we have different tabs, different groupings, still all going to be the same. All right. But of course, remember, once we open a file, we still need to save it. So let me show you real quick how to save it. It's the same steps we did with Word. I'm going to go to my File tab, and we're going to do Save As. And remember, I recommend using Browse to save it to your computer so you could easily access where it is. So you'll click Browse. It'll take you to your file system. And again, I like putting mine in the downloads. There we go. And then in the file name, you'll go ahead and name your file. So in the case of your projects, it'll be your first and last name project, whatever project it is. This one I'll just do Jasmine Ahedad Demo 1. All right. And please note your workbooks, they have a different file extension. So these letters at the end, XLSX, means that this is an Excel workbook file. Not to be confused with DOCX, which is your Word document. So if that changes, if this changes, notice if you click on it, there's a lot of other options. But if they change, it completely changes how the file works. So just make sure you have that XLSX, that's Excel. But once you've named it and you found the spot you want to put it in your file system, go ahead and click Save. And there we go. Just like with your Microsoft Word documents, up here you could say the name of the file you just saved and save to this PC. And whenever you want to save changes you made, you could always click on this little cartridge, the Save button up here at the top. Do Control S on your keyboard, or again, you could go to your file and save. Okay, so you have created maybe your first workbook ever. And you're probably wondering, Ms. Ojeda, what the heck is going on here? Well, you see, Microsoft Excel is a software for you to create spreadsheets. And what spreadsheets are is basically organized columns and rows for you to put data into. So you've probably might have heard of Microsoft Excel before and thought about all those numbers and charts and such. This is the application that creates all of those, well, at least creates those nice looking numbers and those charts and such. And you'll also be learning how to do that cool stuff. A lot of this is used within business applications. Even if you're just keeping track, like for me as an instructor, sometimes I keep track of student grades and data through my own workbook. So there's a lot of different applications for this. You'll notice with your project, you'll be creating a little budgeting sheet. Of course, you could edit it as you go through the course, but notice it's a good way to keep track of data. All right, so that's a spreadsheet. Basically, you're able to insert data in organized rows and columns. Now, I need to mention some things about how to actually navigate a spreadsheet. When navigating a spreadsheet, you'll notice, again, we are not taken to a page on the screen. We just see a giant grid with a bunch of different little boxes. And when you click your mouse around, it goes from box to box. You'll notice each box is highlighted. If you ever want to zoom in, we have the same little slider down here to zoom in closer to those boxes or zoom out farther away from those boxes. You can still use the same method of holding down on your control key and using the scroll on your mouse to scroll in and out. But what these boxes specifically are called cells. Make sure you keep that terminology in mind. I'm going to be saying the word cells a lot. So cells is individual boxes in your rows and columns. We're going to use my trusty little Microsoft Paint for me to help you visualize exactly what we're working with. But when we're organizing data, we like to keep things in tables. So especially maybe if we're keeping track of who's winning in, let's say, I don't know, how many games we're winning within a certain session, you may want to keep a table where it's like, hey, all right, yeah, we have me, and then there's you. So we have a table with certain headers, and then maybe we have certain games that we're playing, and we want to see how many wins we're doing. So maybe this one's like tic-tac-toe. Maybe another one is, I'm forgetting a lot of names. Maybe another one is checkers and so on. And we're keeping track of different wins and losses. So we'd have data like this. Excuse my handwriting with the mouse. Not very nice. All right. But with tables, typically, again, we think of it like this. Now, usually anything going horizontally, so side by side, that's considered a row. Anything that goes up and down is a column. There we go. So that's usually how we keep track of tables. You have your rows and you have your columns. And each cell is an intersection between a row and column. So each individual box is considered a cell, a single cell. So spreadsheets and tables, when it comes to Excel, again, we consist of rows and columns, and I'll show you how this applies to our interface in a moment. But just know, again, rows, they go side by side, columns, they go up and down. All right. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because there's a very interesting way in which we read rows and columns in Excel. Your rows consist of numbers, so that would be your 1, 2, 3s. There we go. And you'll probably see on Excel far on the left side that each row has its own number. Actually, if I switch back, there we go. You'll see over here rows are consisted of different numbers, and they just keep on increasing when you scroll down. Columns are indicated by letters, so A, B, C. And they will also keep going up in the alphabet. So you'll see here in Excel, the top area up here goes from A all the way to different letters. It could go all the way to Z. Even when it goes past Z, it just starts adding like A, B, and so on. All right. So if columns are letters and rows are numbers, we need a way to say, hey, if I want to use a specific cell, how do I indicate that? How do I tell someone, either through instructions or verbal instructions, where I should put certain data? Because for this section of the course, it is very crucial where you insert data or where you format data. To do that, we have a little system. Basically, you'll see a lot in instructions, something like this. Let me get the other color. So you'll see a lot of combinations of like A1, B, maybe it's like B5. Maybe you'll even have like here, let's do like an H17. What this indicates is just different combinations of the column and row. So for instance, A1, how we find A1 in our spreadsheet is if you think about it like Battleship, if you ever played Battleship before, you go by in this case, the column first, A, you'll find it here. You could click on the actual column and it'll select all of it. And then you'll find the row for 1, which the row is here, the first row. Whatever those two intersect, that's the cell we're choosing. So this is A1, and you'll actually see here in the top left, it indicates A1. If we want to find B5, let me go back to my Excel. Then you'll read this as, all right, look in column B, okay, and then find row 5, which we'll see is here, which means we're talking about cell B5. Same goes for H17. So in this case, we're trying to find column H, row 17. So if I go to Excel, we'll find column H. So you'll look over, there's H. And then we need to find row 17, which is here. I'll select the intersecting cell, and there we go, H17. So you'll see a lot of this in your assignment, so just make sure you practice choosing different cells based on the column and row that I gave you. All right, so that's reading different cells. Every time I tell you to put something in a certain cell, again, you have to put it right at that insertion point. Now, if you see something like this, let me go ahead. There we go. So if you see something like this, where it's one cell, a colon, and another cell, that means I want you to do something with a certain selection of cells. So this is a selection of cells. This one is saying, hey, from cells B5 to B8. How that looks on Excel? Well, let's go over. So our selection starts at B5. So remember, I tell you, look for the column, and then you'll find the 5th row. So B5, column B, row 5, find the intersection or where they cross. There we go, B5. And I'm telling you to, if we look back, the colon means through B8. So that means you'll want to do things from cells cells B5, B6, B7, and B8. Okay, right now I'm just showing you very simple selections. You'll notice you just go to a cell, click on it. But if you want to select multiple cells, you'll go to the very first one of that selection, so in this case B5, and place your cursor in the center of the cell. You want to make sure that you have that fat white cross in the middle. This is going to be very important, especially for the next chapter. But make sure you have that bold white cross in the middle. hold down on your selection button, so the mouse, go ahead and hold down, and then drag your cursor to that last selection, so B8, so B5 to B8. Then you can let go, and you selected multiple cells. So that's if you need to select multiple cells. Sometimes you're just doing things within this selection of cells, so you want to make sure you get each one of them. All right. And it doesn't have to be for just, in this case, just cells in the same column. It could be anything from cells in the same row, or even something like this. Cells in multiple rows and columns, but it still creates this big block. So I'll always indicate it with the colon. That's how we always indicate it with. So again, you can see things in the same column. You'll even get things here. I'll just use a normal color. You'll even get things like C3 to let's do D9 and so on. So you could practice this on your own, selecting those selection of cells, but just know colons means that there's a grouping. If it's just the letter and number by itself, it's just a single cell. All right, so I know that was quite a bit just to explain cells, but again, very crucial when it comes to reading your assignment. I do suggest taking some time to make sure you understand how to read cells before you even start your assignments. All right. So that's navigating cells. Now let's go ahead. So you're able to click into your cells. Right now, let's just go into A1. Now let's actually start editing our spreadsheet. So creating a table. Let's do one with, here, let's pretend that we're keeping track of pets in a pet hotel. I don't know why. I feel like in a very pet mood right now. Okay, so go ahead. Place your cursor in A1. Right now, we're just going to put the title for our table. So all you have to do, if you want to insert text into a specific cell, you'll select the cell. You'll see that it has the green highlight around it. And you could just start typing. So I'm going to say number of pets in the hotel. And when you're done with that, you could just go ahead and click enter. And when you click enter, it takes you to the next cell. Let me select A1 again. There we go. You'll notice when I select A1, there's an area up here that also has what you typed in, whatever contents you included. This is called a formula bar. Very important, again, for the next couple of chapters, but this is also how you could type in text. So you could always, here, if we go to, let's say, B1, if you don't want to immediately start typing in, you could click into the formula bar and then start typing. There we go. Let me go ahead and delete the contents in there. To delete any contents, you could just select the cell you want to delete and then do your delete key or backspace. There we go, and click enter. All right, but we have a title here, and notice I typed in letters or text into a cell. You're probably wondering, Miss Ojeda, aren't spreadsheets for numbers? Yes, they are, but text is also how we're able to identify what those numbers are. When you read tables, it isn't just a bunch of numbers on a sheet. You also have different headers to indicate what those numbers are. Are they totals? Are they certain calculations? What are these numbers for? So in this case, we could put a title. And even then, you could keep on adding notes for within the spreadsheet. All right, but we have a title. Let's go ahead and keep on adding more information. So we want to expand this a little more. If you're following along, let's go to B2. And let's start putting in different, so we're keeping tracks of pets in our hotel, maybe by certain months. So let's go ahead and let's start typing in headers for pets. So B2, I'm going to put in, let's do dogs. And of course you could click enter, or you could do tab to go to the next cell to the right of it. So if I do tab, it confirms the text in there, and it'll take me to the next one. So then I could just keep typing. Cats. I'm going to hit tab. And this one, what's another good pet? Let's do bunnies. And I could tab over. If you ever need to edit text within a cell, you could just click into it. And when you start typing, it overwrites everything. So maybe if I don't want to call it bunnies, maybe I want it to be called rabbits. Notice I just started typing and it includes the text. And if I click enter, it confirms it. Select that last cell again. If there is specific parts you want to edit, so maybe like in the case of the title A1, maybe I just want to get rid of the first part, number of. I don't have to type in everything on my own. I could just edit it like how we do with a Word document. There's different ways of doing that. One, you could just select into the formula bar. So notice I just click into it. You have an insertion point, and you could just select text or go to different parts and start deleting. And when you click enter, it confirms it. All right. Another way is you could just go to the cell, select it, and then double click, and you get a cursor inside of the cell in which you could edit. So it acts like a formula bar, but just within the cell itself. So maybe I just want to shorten this to Pet Hotel. And then there we go, delete, and click enter. All right, so different ways in which you could edit the text. Okay, let's keep on adding to this table so we could actually start getting to the numbers. So we have a pet hotel. We're keeping track of how many dogs, cats, and rabbits we may have. Here in the A column, let me do something. Actually, this will be fun for you to see. We're going to do this by month. So maybe we're keeping track of how many animals went through the hotel during a month. So in A3, I'm going to type in January. I hit enter so it could go down to the row below me. And I'm going to type in February, enter. And something, so you can keep on typing in the rest of the months, but here's the cool thing about Excel. So the reason why it's good for keeping track of data, one, of course, there's a lot of tools you'll be learning that are really cool, but also it is intuitive with things you may be trying to do. Basically, Excel can kind of tell different patterns you're typing in to your document. Common patterns, like in this case, months. You'll notice, let me try to zoom in real close for you to see. Oh, there we go. You'll notice with each of your cells, when you select it, of course you get that green highlighting around it, but then also on the bottom corner of the cell around the highlight, you'll see a tiny green box. And when you hover over it, your cross, so the cursor, the crosshairs, turns skinnier. This is called your fill, your AutoFill. And what it can do, follow along with me. So make sure you have months written down, January, February. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my cursor over to get that small plus sign. And you're going to click and hold and then drag it down. And you'll notice there's a little subscript saying March, April, May, June, July. And you can keep scrolling down until it says December for the entire year. There we go. So you could just scroll down. Notice everything scrolls down with you. And then you could just let go. And it fills it in for you. That's our nice little fill feature, our nice little autofill, and it will help you a lot with a lot of your assignments. So you'll be seeing me use it a lot. I highly suggest it because notice it could be a time saver. I don't have to type in all of these months on my own. I could just use it to keep up the pattern. This will be very consistent within a lot of projects, so keep that in mind. Once more, you'll have, when you select a cell, you have that big white cross in the middle. But when you put it to the bottom right of the cell, above that little green box, it turns into that skinny cross. That one you could use to click and hold and do different patterns. So keep that in mind for now. And yes, it goes sideways too. All right, let me undo it. Again, your undo button, you could do Control Z, or you could use that little back button at the top to undo. Speaking of which, let me go ahead and save it here. Perfect. All right. So that's inserting different text into your cells. Now let's put in numbers. So again, we just go through and we just start typing in numbers. I'll just do a couple for now. Let's say in January we had 10 dogs, 5 cats, and 3 rabbits. February, maybe 15 dogs, 7 cats, 4 rabbits, and so on. So just start typing in different numbers for each. And notice, again, this is a very basic table we're using. Very nice. Again, we keep track of data, and we could do some calculations with this data, which we will do in a moment. So again, just fill in some of these values. Doesn't have to be specific. Could just be at the top of your head. Like for me, I'll just stop here. Okay. So you've typed in some values. Before we start doing some calculations, let's do something about this table. So you'll notice, even though we could kind of see the grid lines of our table, it doesn't look very appealing. For example, if you wanted to present this to your boss, they'd be like, oh, cool. You have data, you're keeping track of data, but it doesn't quite look nice to look at. You do want some professionality to it, kind of like with your Word documents. You could type in an essay. You could have the most beautiful writing and points in your essay. But if it doesn't look good, for example, if the font's not good, they're not going to have a fun time reading it and they'll just dismiss it. Unfortunately, that's how it is in different fields. So let's spice up this table a little bit. One of the big things is making sure that these grid lines are different from the grid lines of the rest of your spreadsheet. We're just focusing on this table here. So go ahead, select all of the cells in this table, excluding the title. So I'm going to select A2 to D14. So remember, I've selected my cell at the first part, A2. Click, hold, and drag all the way to D14, and then let go. Okay. So again, whatever you select, just like in Word, whatever you select is the changes that you will make. So any changes we make from here will be made to the selection. So again, be careful. All right. But you'll notice up here in the Home tab, we still have options for our fonts. So if we want to make stuff look bigger, you could still change the font size. Actually, that makes it smaller, but you can still change the font size. You can still change the font family. And heck, you can still make things bold, italics, underlined, and so on. So you could do this for multiple cells. You could do this for individual cells. So still make use of those fonts, even down to your alignment. If you want to center things, your center alignment, you could do that from here. All right. But we want to do something about the grid lines. So the grid lines in the rest of our spreadsheet, we want to differentiate from the ones in the table, which you'll go to your, again, Home tab, your font group, and you'll see the section for the borders. There we go. It's that little grid. I'm going to have you click on the drop down, and you're going to find the option for all borders. Go ahead and click on it. And you'll notice if I select elsewhere, so deselect these cells, these borders are more prominent now against the ones here. So I always recommend doing this with any table you create. You want to make sure it's different from the rest of the sheet. All right. And if you want to create some differentiation between these headings and the rest of the table, you could do things like make the border down here along this side thicker. So I've selected the top row A2 to D2. You could go back to your font group, click on the drop down, and there's an option for thick bottom border. Go ahead and select it. And when I deselect, there we go. Kind of hard to see from here, but you'll notice that border is slightly thicker from the rest. I can do the same, something similar over here, I believe. Actually, no, it does not provide it for the right side. That's all right. There's other ways in which we could differentiate the headers, but just know those are different things you could do with the borders. Okay. Other things we could do to differentiate headers is I could select A2 to D2. There we go. And I'll make it bold. There we go. And also I could change the color of the cells. So right now all the cells are white. If you want to change the color, again in your home tab, you could still stay in the font group. And this one you'll go to your fill color. So that's the one with the paint bucket. Usually this one is used for highlighting in Word document, but here this is for the cells. You'll see color of the background of the cells to make them stand out. You could select the drop down to find a color. Let me do this as a light blue. Or there we go. And you just select it. There we go. And you'll see that this header is now blue. And if I want to select A3 to A14, those are my months. I could turn it into a different color. So again, font group, go to your fill color drop down and select the color. Let me make this orange. Perfect. So now this is looking a lot more readable as compared to all of the black and white and no borders. So you could keep messing around with the colors. Even notice, just for fun, well, let me bold these A3 to A14. All right. And again, notice I'm going to select B2 to D2, so that's my animals that I'm keeping track of in the pet hotel. And you could still change the font color. So same thing, font group, you have there's that big A with the color underneath it. Click on the drop down. And if I want it to be a dark orange, you could select it. There we go, changes the color. Okay. Let's do some other formattings. Our title here. Let's go ahead, make it bold. So A1 with our pet hotel, I'm going to make it bold to make it prominent. Let's change the font size. So again, go to your font size and I'm going to choose one of the bigger fonts. Let's do 20. All right. And maybe I want it centered across this table. Would kind of make it look a little more professional. So some students, what they'll do is they'll select the cell, go to the alignment group, and then do center. But notice it just keeps it to that cell. Weird. Don't worry. That's kind of how it works. So do know any changes you make is to the cell itself. You could think of it as a little cube, kind of like with your Word document. You could think this as the little page in which you're applying the changes to. What we need to do, if we want it centered across this table, we need to tell Excel that, hey, I want to combine A1 with D1 to make it one giant cell. When I say center, it centers around this area, not just this one. To do that, go ahead and select A1 to D1, and in your Home tab alignment group, you'll see a button called Merge and Center. And you could just go ahead and click on the button, or you could click on the drop down and do Merge and Center. And it puts the cells together. So notice here, let me There we go. So notice when I select it, it selected the entire selection and it's treating it as its own space. So if I don't want it centered aligned, I could still do the right align or align left, and it goes all the way to the left side of this big cell. And if I want it right aligned, notice it goes all the way to this side. And when I center it, it centers across the entire table. All right, so merge and center, something you could do, especially if you're combining cells for aesthetics. It is mostly just an aesthetic appeal. So that's merge and center. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at these months. The months over here. It's kind of getting squished when we get to the larger months, physically in size with the text, September, November, December. So what we could do is we could change the sizes of our columns and rows. For example, A1, we may need to expand a little bit to fit September, November, December comfortably. What you could do is for selecting entire columns, just go up to the letter up at the top, so in this case A1, and just click, and notice everything is selected here. Be careful because notice everything is selected in the column. If you select an entire column and you change something, like let me show you. If I go and edit the fill color to green and I click away, that entire column turns green. And that could be something that's very hard to undo. Unless it's immediately done and you click the undo button. Okay, but do be careful with that. But let me select A1. The one that could be consistent height-wise is, not height-wise, but width-wise is changing how big it is. So for changing any size of a column, select the column itself. Then you go to the corner, or you go to the edge of the column, and you'll see my cursor turns into a line with two arrows pointing to the sides. You could click and hold and drag it to make it bigger. And now everything's comfortably fit. You could also drag it to make it smaller, and everything's squished now. All right. So that's how you can make it bigger, small, more narrow, or more wider. Something called AutoFit is also workable. So you can put your cursor right in the middle between the columns, double click, and it auto-fits to the biggest contents in that column. Now, I know for the projects, I put specific widths and heights I want you to apply. Quite honestly, as long as it looks good on your screen, so as long as it's not very squished like this or very large like this, you'll be all right. So it could be a comfortable width. But if you do want to get the exact measurements, as I mentioned in the instructions, then you could use this. So again, select the column in which you want to change the width. For example, let me just do the column B for now. So again, you could do this for each of the columns. To get exact measurements, right click on the letter itself, so the column letter. And you'll see down here in the options, column width. When you select it, there we go. It gives you a little dialog box, column width. You could type in the numbers that I indicated to you. So this one is saying 8.08. I could turn it to 10, so you just start typing in there. Or you could delete the text and type in and click OK. And it does it exactly to that width. Okay. So again, I know the instructions say to use specific measurements, but I'm not going to be too picky about it. Just make it reasonable. That's all I ask. Okay. Same applies for rows. So everything I showed you with columns also applies to rows. It's just now up and down. So for example, if I go to row 2, you just select it here. You notice here on the left all the numbers. You select the number for that row. and it selects the entire row. And again, anything you change applies to the entire row, left and right. Okay. To manually make it bigger, you just have to go to the edges of that row, like in this case here, and now you see a sideways line with the arrows going up and down. And you could click and hold and shift it wider. There we go. Or smaller. You could even right click on it and do the row height. There we go. And same thing, you could edit the text in there, the width in there. Let's do 30 and click OK. There we go. So again, just same as the columns, you're just working with the height of rows. One thing I do want to notice, if I make this bigger, all the text stays along the bottom. If you want it to center in the row, you'll use your alignment. So notice this center alignment goes left to right. The alignment above here applies to how it is up and down. So I could do middle align to make it go across the middle of your row. And if you do top align, it keeps it to the top. So more stuff you could use for making your tables look nice. And of course, you still have your auto fit. So I select 2. I could go in, make sure you put your cursor in between the row borders, double click. There we go, and it auto fits. Before I move on, you could select multiple rows to change. So for example, let me just mess around with each of these. So I'm getting each of the borders, making it very not good sizing. And you could go ahead and manually change everything back or put in the numbers for each of the measurements. Or sometimes what I do is I just go over and I'm going to select all of these rows. So this one's going to be kind of tricky. If you want to select multiple columns or rows, or in this case multiple columns, make sure you click out into any cell in your spreadsheet. Then you're going to select, you got to do this quick, you got to select A and then drag it across to D. So select A and then hold down and select to D, kind of like if you're selecting multiple cells. You have to click away, click hold on A, drag across to D, there we go. And now if I want to auto fit all of the selections, so kind of shrink wrap everything to its largest contents, you'll go to the very last border of that selection. So in my case, from A to D, that would be between D and E. And double click to auto fit. There we go. And now everything looks a-okay here, except I do want to open up column A a bit. So that's formatting your columns or rows. Let's do something such as, one thing that's kind of hard to show within this example, but for your assignment, you're probably going to get something called formatting numbers, or you have to format numbers to a certain thing I show you. Basically, I'll put your attention, click into any of your numbered cells, so any of your cells with numbers in it. Go to your Home tab and take a look at the number group here. Now, sometimes, usually most of the time with spreadsheets, you're not just working with quantities. Like in this case, we're doing quantities of dogs, cats, and rabbits. But usually we're dealing with money or the sort. Money, decimals, it could be anything. And to do that, you don't want to, let me use this cell for example. You don't necessarily want to do the $ and the number. Although Excel can detect it, I don't recommend it. But what you can do is, again, for practice, choose any cell with a number in it, or let's work here with this random cell outside of our table. I'm going to type in 25, again, something we could work with. Select that cell with a number, and again, in your Home tab, number group, you're going to find the little box. This is called your number formatting. Usually by default, it's set to general. If you click on the drop down, you'll see different formats you can put this number. So general means it's just any number we type in. Number indicates that it's a very specific number, maybe again quantities or certain calculations, averages we're keeping track of. If I select number, notice it starts putting decimals into it because again we're kind of telling Excel, hey, this is a number. I know that kind of sounds weird, but Excel is it's a machine. We have to tell it exactly what we want. Okay. But if you look in your number group, if you don't like those decimals, you have more options to choose from. So in your number group, notice there's these two symbols with a bunch of the little zeros and arrows going back and forth. You could decrease the decimal. There we go. And notice it gets rid of the decimals in that box. Or you could increase it. And you could keep on increasing it. That's if you want very exact results. All right. So that's what the number format is, especially if we go to the number format area drop down and you do currency. Then it starts putting in dollar signs in front of your text. And when I type into it, so maybe I don't want $25, I want $100. I think a lot of us want $100 right now. But notice when I type it in, it just shows the 100 without the decimals or the dollar sign. But if I click enter, it does the decimal and dollar sign. So number formatting is a very quick way to format your calculations, your numbers in Excel. And the reason why is, again, this $100 is very different from just 3. In this case, this is 3 rabbits. But very different. Okay. But yeah, you could put in different numbers here. Notice the other ones, they're just normal because each of the number formats is just general. But once I select these cells, go to my number format and change it to currency, then they all change with their dollar signs. Okay. So keep number format in mind. We're going to use this at a couple of times in the course. Also, one thing I do want to note, it's not just decimals you could change. In the number group, you'll see that there's a little dollar sign. And if you click on the drop down, you could indicate even different currencies. All right. So something you'll be using in your project and also a lot in the future. So don't forget, Home tab, the number group, you could even do the settings, and there's a lot more to choose from. Okay. Now, one of the last things I'm going to show is something that will ease you into chapter 2. Okay. And that is something called AutoSum. What AutoSum is, let's test it out here. So if I want to see the total amount of dogs so far that I've been taking care of in my pet hotel, you're going to go, so in this case, total dogs, we want that total to be all the way down here. So we're going to create a new row down here, total. And hey, look, Excel saw that, oh, we're continuing down this column with formatted text. I'm going to copy that formatting as well. It doesn't do it exactly because notice the borders aren't applied, so keep watch of that. But again, Excel can be pretty intuitive. Okay. But again, we want to keep track of how many dogs we've taken care of in total so far. So we're going to do at this very bottom of this column, the total. And of course, you could do the math yourself, calculate this in your head, and type in the numbers. So let's say, let me try to do this at the top of my head. 10 plus 15, 25, plus 14, that's 39. Oh gosh, if I'm getting this wrong, I'm sorry. And then 49. So you could type it in here into the total, and you could be done with your day. But then what happens if May gets 15 more dogs? Then I'm going to have to do that mental math again and type it in here. So, oh gosh, from 49 plus 15. You see? Not really, can't do it at the top of my head. I'm having a brain fart. So you don't have to do it all on your own. You can use something called AutoSum. So delete what's in that total cell. All right. And select the cell. I'm going to have you go to your Home tab and go all the way to the group towards the right called Editing. You're going to see a button called AutoSum. I'm going to have you click on the AutoSum button. So it has the backwards E, the fancy backwards E. Click on the button and you'll see it's doing something pretty, it's doing something here with the cells. If you want to confirm it, you could click enter or click the AutoSum button again. And notice, hey, it has a 64. And if you do the math right now, it is 64. So we've taken care of 64 dogs so far. And if we have new dogs we take care of in June, you could type in, maybe this one is a big month, 29. I'll type in 29. And when I click enter, keep your eye on the total here. So the total, watch what happens. It changes with the data that we included. So I could keep on adding to this. So 14, enter, 31, enter, and that total will keep on updating. That is called AutoSum. So AutoSum, let me go ahead and delete what's in here real quick so I could do a quick breakdown. So again, you do that in your Home tab, Editing Group, click on the AutoSum button. And what this will be brought into your chapter 2. This is called a function. You'll notice that it uses, it says here that's using the function sum. And it's getting a collection of cells in which we're adding together, or at least we're performing calculations on. This is showing us the grouping for B13 to B14. So Excel is seeing, hey, I see that in this column, there are a bunch of numbers. Do you want to add all these numbers? And we may be like, hey, yes, I do want to add all those numbers. So that's why we click enter or click the button again to confirm. If for whatever reason, maybe in this case, we don't want to calculate the December, then you're just going to have to change the selection in here to those different cells. So you could still type into this cell. Again, we go over this more in depth in chapter 2. And instead of B3 to B14, you could just delete the 4 and do B3 to B13. Click enter. There we go. And so notice, since we left out December, if I type into December, it doesn't change. And now it's actually giving me an error because it wants me to include December since it detects numbers. But again, it's how you're keeping track of your data. All right, but for now, I want to have all of the totals. So let me delete this one more time. And then let me do the AutoSum button and click it again. Oh, actually, it's only doing it for B14. If it does that to you, let me undo. Let me delete this. I click escape to get out of there. Okay. Let me delete the December. There we go. And now I could go to my total. So B15, AutoSum. Now it's selected everything. Click AutoSum again, and perfect. Okay. And you can keep on clicking to each of these rows and do the AutoSum. Or remember our little AutoFill? It still applies here. Again, this will be your lifesaver for this course, especially in the Excel section. If I want to copy this AutoSum feature to work with the rest of these columns, you could still go to that little, so remember, select that little green box on the bottom right, click and hold, and I'm going to drag it sideways so it gets column C and column D. There we go. And what it does is it sees the pattern of, oh, you want to add the columns that I'm in, that this function is in. Okay. And then it changes it. Notice here in the formula bar, it shows the sum. So in this case, the actual sum function, but the cell shows the calculation. Again, we go over this more in chapter 2, but just keep that in mind if you still want to change that range up here. You could click in the formula bar. Okay, but notice this one does it for column C, this one does it for column D. So now when I go into each of these columns and start adding in how many cats are taken care of, maybe this month we just did 1. It updates accordingly. This one we do, let's do 9. And there we go. We don't have to keep on doing our own calculations. We could just type in numbers and keep track of everything. All right. So that is your introduction to Excel. Something as simple as this can actually get you quite far through a lot of careers. A lot of times it is just keeping track of certain totals or just keeping track of data in a very organized fashion. So this chapter and the next chapter, very crucial for, again, just even very simple data entry. So I do advise really messing around with these different features to get a nice feel for it. All right, but that will be it for this demonstration video. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. Excel can be a tricky subject to cover, so if you do need help, just let me know. All right, thank you.